The Journal of Edward Nellis, October 23rd, 2087. Dear Journal, this is a new and unusual experience for me. I've never really kept my thoughts noted in any form, but my therapist thinks this will help me recover from my trauma. I'm not sure how I should start, but by introducing myself seems like as good a place as any. My name is Edward Nellis. I am 34 years old. I have a loving wife named Nora, a robotic helper and close friend named Cogsworth, and a 7-month-old son named Sean. I'm a veteran who served for both the British and American forces. I currently live in the United States, in a nice little home in Sanctuary, Boston. But originally I'm from Lancashire, England. I was in the army as a combat medic. I signed up straight out of high school and began my training straight away. Most of my time was spent doing drills, working in bases, with the occasional deployment wherever I was needed. It wasn't until I was 19 that I had my first taste of real combat. During my time in service, I met Nora. To cut a long story short, she was the doctor who treated my wounds and aided in my recovery after I was the victim of a chopper crash during a patrol. My injuries resulted in an early retirement, and I've been out of service for what will be 5 years tomorrow. From the moment I first met Nora, we got on like a house on fire. One thing led to another, and now I'm an immigrant in America, starting a new life and family with her. During my retirement, I've been a voice against war. I did this because the sights and the events I've experienced during my service have left me scarred in both body and mind. For the last year, I've been seeing a therapist to help me with my previously mentioned PTSD. Progress has been slow, but effective. Until recently, as my anxiety began to peak again for 2 reasons. The first is because I'm due to give a speech today at the Veterans Hall about the consequences of war that affect our world. The second is because tensions between the United States and China have been getting worse. Threats of nuclear war have been thrown around and people are trying to figure out if it's a bluff or not. Some people may shrug it off, but I can tell you as a veteran that a threat is still a threat, no matter its severity. I guess this is a good place to leave my first entry. I'm not sure what else to say right now. It's currently 10 AM and I still have the rest of the day ahead of me, so if I can think of anything else to mention, I'll add it as the day goes on. But nothing much ever... Oh, for God's sake. It happened. There was no bluff. China attacked. They dropped the nukes! It all happened so fast. I still can't believe this is real. My last paragraph is incomplete because I was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was a representative of Vault-Tec. He said that the big kaboom was inevitable, but thanks to my family's service to the US, we had been pre-selected to have a place in the vault. I had heard about the vault. They'd just finished building it about a week ago. It made people very angry because they tore down the playground to do it. My heightened anxiety gave me mixed emotions about him. He presented himself like a con man in a Saturday morning cartoon, pretending to care about you while thinking of his own pockets filling up. Yet the threat he was talking about was very real. And I won't lie, it was a slight comfort knowing that should the bombs drop, my family would be safe. But that comfort was soon overshadowed by my worries of my friends, the others in my neighbourhood. I daydreamed about those fears for a while until the rep asked for my name. I snapped back into reality long enough to answer what little questions he had for me. He left with an engineered smile and I turned to seek the genuine one of Nora. Nora had a natural bedside manner. She knew how to make me see good things for what they were. She was right to say that we can enjoy peace of mind knowing we have a place in the vault. That eased my anxiety a bit. But then Codsworth hurried in saying that Sean was being difficult. In an instant, my worries were gone and all my thoughts and focus were purely on Sean. Looking at my beautiful son, everything felt calm. It was a sensation I only ever felt with my family. I guess there's a lot of people who feel this with their families, and I'm not saying I have the best family ever, but I am thankful for what they do for me. Comforting Sean with his spaceship mobile, I was at peace. Nothing mattered but him and my wife. I love them both so much. I think Nora must have known I was a little shaken from the rep at the door. She came into the room and suggested we go for a picnic. I loved having those picnics. Nora makes the damn best beef subs ever. I don't know how she does it, but nothing beats her cooking. Our plans were ruined, however, as Codsworth then called for us. His panicked tone made us both worry. Hurrying into the living room, Codsworth was watching an emergency news broadcast. The host was reading out reports of nuclear bombs detonating all across the country. I felt my heart plummet, like a hole had been blown in my chest, taking all of my senses from me at once. I froze in fear. My deepest ones were coming true. A choir of voices began to yell in my head, drowning out everything but my thoughts and the host. I was right to worry. All your fighting was for nothing. The rep was right. Through the torture of my internal screams came Nora's scared voice. Coming back to my senses, Nora had grabbed Sean and was stood next to me just as scared. Seeing Nora like that must have awoken the sleeping soldier inside me. I yelled to get her attention. We need to get to the vault now! I could have torn through the door as I raced out with her into the street. As we did, the cul-de-sac was in chaos. Some of our friends and neighbours were running towards the bunker. Some were holding each other in the street as they waited for the inevitable, while others argued out of fear. Fear. The thoughts began to ring again. There's a lot of people. What if we don't make it? And if we do, what if the line's too big? How long do we have left? Trapped in my prison of the mind once again, I blocked everything out around me. Yet my body was in autopilot. It had managed to run me to the vault where the enraged shouting of the vault rep pulled me back to life. The vault rep was being denied access and vowed revenge as he desperately fled. I took his place as quickly as he left and stated my family name. To my relief, the guard ticked 3 boxes and then stepped aside to let us through. We charged up the hill and were ordered to stand on the platform. While we were waiting, I turned to Nora and Sean. This could be the end, I thought, but I'll be fucking damned if I died not telling my family I love them. Nora answered back in kind, but was interrupted when a nuke exploded. I will never forget that sight. I had seen them in films, but to see one in person is very different. On the screen they were always black and white, but when I saw the blinding golden tower of destruction in the distance, I could have died from shock. Its devastating roar sounded like it was only a few feet in front of me. I was deafened for a second before the cries of the unfortunate began to ring louder. Over the horizon, a black cloud was approaching like a wild stampede as it tore through the very flesh of the earth. The platform began to sink right before the cloud hit us. We were deafened once again, as what I could only describe as the death wail of Mother Nature echoed in the tunnel as the wave of destruction continued its malicious stampede above us. Sinking into the tunnel, I looked up as the blast doors began to close. I compared it to an eye taking in its final sight before death. In fact, I was convinced I'd died right there. The tunnel was cold and dark. I knew there were people near me, but their stunned silence made the atmosphere lifeless. I reached for where I saw Nora last, but felt nothing. Panicked, I whispered her name, fearing no answer. She whispered back, and I sighed in tearful euphoria. Light began to slowly trickle into the tunnel, and eventually I could see everyone again. Some of the people I didn't recognise, but 2 of them I recognised as our neighbours. We gave each other appreciative looks, until a gate opened and a security guard dressed in armour with a blue and yellow jumpsuit invited us to enter the vault while giving us his company's slogan shtick. We stood there like deers in headlights, leaving one by one, with Nora and I exiting last. All of us were distraught. Having our lives ripped away from us only a few seconds ago made the security guard look like the Grim Reaper taking us to the afterlife. The vault entrance had a similar look to that of an airport. Strangely, it gave a small sense of comfort. Probably because I'd used airports so much in the past, it gave a sense of comforting familiarity. But the reality of the situation overshadowed it. We queued to get a jumpsuit where we were instructed to follow a scientist. He told us that we were going to be frozen until it was safe to return to the surface. Cryosleep, I think he called it. The very concept sounded unnerving, and I could feel the chill on my skin already. A short journey took us to a room full of huge chambers that we were to enter. These coffins were to hold us until it was safe? I couldn't convince myself it was true. All those cheesy late-night sci-fi movies didn't seem so funny anymore. Now I was the victim of the mad scientists. Others shared in my anxiety and refused to step inside until their questions had been answered. Others climbed in willingly, possibly just wanting an escape from the apocalypse. I don't blame them. I wanted this all to end just as much, if not more, than them. Nora and I were taken to our pods. We both shared a kiss, and I comforted her, saying that I won't be far away. Climbing into the chamber, I was feeling empty. Like all my emotions had been drained from me. My thoughts drifted into the future. What was in store for us? When we woke up, would the world be fixed? Can it be fixed? Will we wake up again? My heart began to race a little as I looked into Nora's eyes for what I hoped wouldn't be the last time. Then everything went white. The next thing I remember, I was waking up from my sleep. I felt weak, like I'd not eaten in days. I hardly could keep my head up. But I could keep it up long enough to see that life had not finished with my misery yet. Through the frost and glass I saw two figures. One wearing a blue suit of some kind, and another in what looked like biker gear. They were opening Nora's pod. Inside, she still held Sean like the caring mother she was. I assumed the blue figure was a staff member and they were helping her out of the pod. The blue figure tried to take Sean from Nora, but she refused to hand him over. Then the biker pulled a gun, threatening her. Nora, still confused and scared, continued to wrestle Sean away from the blue figure. Then the biker... That bastard! He shot her! And I was helpless! Nora's body was motionless as the blue figure hastily ripped Sean from her. The blue figure hurried away as per the biker's orders. The biker approached my pod, and I saw his face, clear as day. He was middle-aged and bald with a dark, rough stubble beard. A deep scar ran down the left side of his face, eyes as dark as the void, and his voice deep and cold. I could remember this face as rage burned it into my memory. If I have to spend the rest of my life chasing him, if I have to crawl my way out of the grave, even if he's the savior of the goddamn world, this man will die by my hand, and I will make him pay for tearing my family apart. Before he left, he called me the backup. I don't know what he meant by that, and frankly, I don't give the slightest shit. Everything turned white again, and I can't remember what happened after that. But the next thing I know, I'm awake and choking. As I was coming to my senses, the door opened, and in agony, I stumbled out. I forced myself to Nora's pod. Maybe she was still alive. Maybe I could still save her. The machine was frustratingly slow to open itself. I prepared myself to catch her as she fell out, but she was gone. I stared for a few minutes trying to piece together what happened, replaying everything in my head from a few moments ago. Maybe the bastards took her body too. But maybe she escaped. Was I in the same room? Every possibility brought up more questions, but they all shared a common factor. Nora was gone. I clung to what little hope I had that Nora was alive and used it to fuel my attempts at escaping the vault. I didn't even stop to check if anyone else was alive. My strength hadn't fully returned, and what I used to rush my way to Nora's pod took the wind out of me. The best I could achieve then was a gentle walk. At this speed, I noticed the dull colours of the vault. They were basic, unwelcoming, joyless, artless. In a word, corporate. The sound of an alarm echoed in the abandoned halls. Somehow it emphasised how alone I was in here. Or so I thought. As I turned the corner, I saw a window with a huge black mark on it. Then the mark moved. That sudden movement startled me and I didn't catch what it actually was, but it looked like an insect? maybe? Unsure if I was safe, I began to sneak my way along the halls. I spotted what looked like an office and began raiding it for supplies. Most of it was crap, though I was able to find a stim pack. I hadn't seen one of those since my army days. The terminal was still active and I searched it trying to get an idea of where everyone was. The first entry I found was a briefing. It turns out the Vault was running an experiment using us as the guinea pigs to see what the long-term effects were to those people in suspended animation. There was also orders to dispose of anyone that made it into the Vault but wasn't on the list. Anyone with even a quarter of a brain could tell you what dispose meant. Damn Vault Tech! Damn them to hell! I was tempted to read on for more information, but I had to stop. I had to find Nora. I left the room and carried on deeper into the Vault. I could feel my strength slowly returning, and just in time. In the next room, I was confronted by a creature. It charged at me and my soldier's instincts told me to fight it. So I closed my fist and I brought it down onto the creature with everything I had. It fell lifeless in front of me as I felt a satisfying crunch as my knuckles impacted it. With it dead, I could properly examine it and determine what kind of threat I was dealing with. To my disgust, it was a cockroach, but the size of a small dog. It twitched a little as its green blood slowly pooled onto the floor. I was ready to vomit, but I composed myself and moved on, cautiously as I knew there was indeed a threat in the Vault. As I said before, a threat is still a threat, no matter the severity. I continued to creep forward until I found a sleeping quarters. In the room lay the skeletons of the previous residents. Just how long was I frozen for, I wondered. Some of the skeletons were holding 10mm pistols. Judging by the positions of the corpses, I suspected a suicide pact, but I could be wrong. I took all the guns and ammo I could find in that room. This could be the soldier in me talking, but I felt safer knowing that I had the ability to fire hot lead if I needed to. Further into the vault, I found another skeleton against the door in a hallway. This one was a lab coat holding a pistol and a stim pack. I guessed that this one was a holdout that didn't end well for them. I took the fallen scientist's items and opened the door. It led to what looked like a lobby. More stim packs lay on the desk in front of me. Bullets had dented the walls and another armed skeleton lay on the floor behind the desk. The positioning suggested they were shot during a firefight, taken down before they could even fire a single shot off. To the right of the desk was a small armory that only had one weapon inside. It looked fancy and powerful. However, the case was locked and I had nothing to try and pick it with, so it remains there now as a potential goal for the future. A personal quarters sat at the back of the lobby. I couldn't find anything of value except a carton of 6. I never smoked, but I did ponder if now was a good time to start. Finally, I checked the terminal. As luck would have it, this one was also functional. By accident, I discovered a way to open a sealed door in the lobby that would allow me to travel further into my escape. I hoped. I cocked my pistol and slowly advanced through the door. My breath stilled as I spotted about 5, maybe 6 of the overgrown roaches. Some were bigger than the others. I had managed to scrounge 20 rounds from the corpses before. Obviously enough to take them down, but they were small and quick. If I missed too many times, I may have shot the bullet that would save my life in the future. I knelt by the door frame and quickly assessed the situation before engaging them. I came up with a plan and quickly reassessed it and altered it in my head several times. I chose my first target wisely. The first shot was to be an ambush. I took out the biggest one I could see first and then prepared for the charge from the others. I focused up and controlled my breathing, in and out with every pull of the trigger. 3 of the roaches were able to get close enough to bite me, but they were met with a violent retort. The fight was over in seconds, after which my hands began to tremble. I had forgotten what the thrill of combat was like. It wasn't a scary experience to have again, but the stimulation was a little uncomfortable to feel. Hands still shaking, I pressed on, trying to stay level-headed. All the lessons I learned from both my drill sergeant and on the field were playing like a record in the back of my head. Head down, gun straight, check your corners. A familiar sight greeted me as I carried on down the corridor and entered the final room. the entrance to the vault. The entrance was open as bright rays shone through, a literal light at the end of the tunnel. I took out a few roaches that were lingering and began to search for supplies once more. This time I found something that felt like a godsend. On the dismembered arm of a lab coat, I found a Pip-Boy. I heard the eggheads in the army casually talk about these in the mess hall at times, and I'd worn a prototype one while I was recovering from the helicopter crash in a medical tent. The one I wore was one to monitor my vitals as time went on. But this one was different. If I had to guess, I'd say that this one is a finished model, and the eggheads described it as a personal terminal on your wrist. And they aren't wrong. It's a fantastic piece of kit, and it's been a key factor in aiding in my survival. I'm still fidgeting with it to find out exactly what it can do, but like the one I wore, it does keep track of my vitals. It has a Geiger counter so I know when radioactive material is nearby, and I can keep notes in it. I took the Pip-Boy and made a last sweep of the room. The room cleared of both enemy and supplies. It was time for me to leave. As I walked along the catwalk toward the platform that brought me here, my feet suddenly felt they weighed 50 tons each. Visions of the past closed my sight, and questions I feared the answer for began to plague my thoughts. My heart began to violently beat, my anxiety soared, and I could feel a panic attack coming on. My hands shook so much that I dropped my gun. I fell to my knees, screaming as my mind suffered this hellish torture once again. I can't say for certain how long I was in that state, but I remember waking up on the catwalk. I took several minutes to process what happened and performed some breathing exercises my therapist had taught me, during which time I began to remember the lifetime highlights, the name I had for the happy memories in my life, the day I received my first medal, the day Nora said yes to me, the day we bought Codsworth, the day Sean came into our lives. I found the sense of calm I needed to get back on my feet and remember why I was leaving the vault. To find and save my family. I stood on the platform and it slowly ascended into the grim dark where I was once convinced I had died. When I emerged into the sun, its warm rays comforted my skin while temporarily hurting my eyes. When my vision recovered, I had wished that it hadn't. Once again my breathing became erratic. The world I knew was gone. A twisted and desolate husk was all that was left. I scanned the landscape and spotted several landmarks I was familiar with. With every second that went by, my eyes watered and my throat mustered nothing but groans as I stared in disbelief as both those landmarks and the world was nothing but the aftermath of human arrogance and pride. My home destroyed, an unfamiliar one in its place, unknown dangers at every step, and my family missing and possibly dead. I was living a bad dream. No, my worst nightmare.